Ellen?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi there. It sounds like there's feedback.
One moment.
Hi.
Okay, that should,
Hello.
Hi, I made it.
Did you have to overcome some challenges to do so?
Yeah, my lack of computer skills.
Oh, well, we're all getting better, I'll tell you that.
I suppose I should show you more than the top of my head.
I like it. What's that? Is that like a collection of glass in the background?
Yeah, it's a hutch with glass of all kinds of things. And then
Well, do you see my,
over there we
What
have
do you
a
like?
wine, and over there we have a wine rack.
oh, right next to the desk, like it.
It's important. Well, I'm actually at my dining room table, but it's kind of how it works.
Oh, okay.
I see your, was that the Titanic?
No, look, can you see the wording?
No, not on my screen.
It says justice and liberty.
I'm in favor of both of those.
Then you're in the right, job.
Apparently so.
So I sent you an update. I just changed one of the slides on the PowerPoint. I think I added some additional stuff about independent kind of contractors because there seems to, I'm really not clear on the paid leave kind of side of things. If
Well,
that applies.
You got to be an employee. That's the first part.
I know, but the wording of employee when it's used for unemployment benefits and everything, it's like, I mean, I know it has a definition, it cites to the US code for the definition, but we're also applying employee to independent contractors and things because they're their own employee in some ways for unemployment benefits, but I'm guessing not for paid leave.
No, not for paid leave.
Okay. That's helpful to understand because I think I'm even confused by that because they're using traditional language for new situations that make it a challenge even for us folks who are used to reading challenging items by Congress or other state legislators.
It's I think the whole thing is in flux and nobody really knows much about anything other than, I mean, the law is what it says, but I don't know the traditional definitions of independent contractor and employee go away at all.
Yeah, and I guess it depends on what you're talking about, and things are going to change, but as far as how those apply, like unemployment benefits apply to the traditional independent contractor thing, I think that's changed, I guess, where folks who didn't pay into the system usually weren't eligible, but now they are. Possibly, I should say.
I'd have to research that because I've never taken that approach.
But the unemployment benefits apply to the independent, well, not, yeah, they do apply to under the federal, the supplement under the.
Well, they do if, except that they're not, so you can't really call it unemployment in a way, because if you're independent, you're not really your own company. That's what you're.
Yeah, it's not going to go under whoever they work for. It's going to just be their own application.
Their own, because so they're really an employee of themselves. So
exactly.
Not
That's
really.
what I mean.
Yeah,
that's
so
what I
independent
mean.
Contractor is a definite class of its own.
Right.
And so, but as an employee of their own, in other words, they're their own employer. So sure.
Yeah. And that's what I'm talking about. When you read some of the language of these extra benefits, they keep referring to employee and they don't say and independent contractor. They just refer to employee. And so,
well, but an independent contractor is a sole proprietor. Let's say they're an employee of themselves.
Right.
So they be covered.
And I think that's what, when they're reading things or they're seeing things, they have to think that way to some extent and then ask questions. I mean, I think the state authorities have caught up with the new laws, but I can tell you maybe a week and a half ago, Arizona was still putting out information that independent contractors and those that are self-employed couldn't apply for unemployment benefits. And
well, that doesn't make any sense, actually.
I know, but I think they've changed that. I'm just saying. So
yeah,
I think now that things are getting incorporated because of these acts that were good. I did have a written question, and Ellen, did you see my email? I don't know.
When did you send that?
About an hour ago.
Let
It was
me-
a question that was submitted and it was employment related. I can try to, so Tom, somebody submitted
Oh,
a question.
yes, I do have it.
Yeah, so can you, so if, Tom, I think somebody might submit this kind of question and I've asked, we're not giving legal advice and we don't want to, affect any conflicts of interest, but if they've asked a general question about, a particular situation, how do you want to handle that? Do you want to just say that we can't give out legal advice, or do you want to handle it in a general kind of
Well, I would
scheme?
say I would just handle it generally. I mean, I think if we're going to have meaningful content, I think we
Yeah.
should at least answer questions that people are asking.
Right, I do too. And so this particular question was just about, an employee and how their paid leave, they submitted it for the CARES Act application in terms of the 2/3, whatever, but it came back from the payroll system as they're getting full paid leave. My thinking there, we probably need a few more facts, but
Right.
Oh.
I'm gonna quickly grab my water, which I left in the kitchen, so I'll be right back.
oh, that's a good idea. Me too. I'll do that.
Stop it.
Okay. Oh, we're still got 10 minutes or so, so. Oh, I like your shirt.
Thank you. You won't see much of that. You won't see much of that because all you're gonna see is
We
a
could have done
talking.
a shot of that. We could have just done that.
You're
for
gonna
your
get a hot,
face.
a talking head's all you're gonna get, I think.
Um,
That's all right.
so
How
yeah,
many
so
people
I
are
think
you-
we might get some particular questions, which I think would be really good for to help support some of the content, and some of the gaps in the content. And
That's right.
I'm fine with taking questions as they come in, if Ellen alerts us, if you're okay with
Yeah,
that.
I think that's the best way to go. I know there's no reason to hold them off until the end. So are
No,
we gonna see faces of other people or?
no, usually, so people can call in and I need to actually, it's *9 to raise their hand. So I'm gonna say a little intro about you. And if I find, I gotta look up your thing again. And then,
How many computer screens are you looking at?
I'm just well, I've got one up here. I've got like 3 actually. I've got the laptop here and I've got 2 here. I'm supposed to get my television, my video thing connected, but I'm just using the laptop for now because I don't have a camera on the 2 dual monitor system here.
Yeah, I only have my laptop. I don't have another monitor like I do at work. I have 2 monitors.
I know that's tough to work when you're used to
Well,
that.
what's weird is I never ever used them until I started at Mesh Clark, and then now I really use them a lot.
I know, and it helps productivity. Like
Yeah.
it's like makes so much a difference when you really, and then what you really, that's when you notice it when you go back. Like when I travel, I'm convinced I need to get a travel second laptop because it's so frustrating when I'm trying to work away from.
I don't work when I travel, just so you know.
Good, that's the smart way to do it.
Yeah, I don't take my laptop on vacation, for instance.
That's good. That's smart.
Never mix
Never.
business with vacation.
That's the smart way.
Absolutely.
So
how
I'm
many people are you expecting to be in this little deal?
I don't know. I've had a few.
There's about 47 registered.
Are
Wow.
have we started the meeting so that we're talking with and everybody can hear us? Are we
Yeah.
broadcasting?
We are live. And if I could just get your recommendation on the best way for me to interrupt when there's a question.
Just say we have a few questions and just do that.
Okay.
I think we'll be good
All
with
right.
that. I'm gonna just go through the slides, Tom, and then
That's
have you
fine.
comment.
Yeah, and Ellen, just go ahead and interrupt.
Yeah, just say, excuse me, question.
Okay, I'll do.
And so, yeah, so as far as participants, last week, I can't say for sure how many we had because I don't know if we can call or can account for like the ones that call in.
Okay,
The ones that attend by computer, it shows up at the bottom. And I think right now there's about 8 folks on.
cool.
Yeah, and
Can
so
they see us? Can they see us or just hear us?
both. Well, it depends on if they have, if how they're connected. But if they've logged in on their computer, they should be able to see us.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, and then if
Hi.
you put, and then in the chat, we can see when people kind of submit a question, if you have to open up that chat box, and then that's where Ellen will be monitoring it to see questions submitted. And then folks who are attending by phone, if they do, is it #9 or *9? Let me look. I gotta,
*9.
Fine.
is it *9?
Yes.
Oh yeah. So when they do the *9, they can, you know, ask a question and their hand will come up somewhere, I suppose, right? Let me
I'll
look.
make sure you know. How about
All right.
that?
Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
All right. Tom, is there anything you want me to say in the beginning other than introduce you?
No, you can introduce me. Just 49 years experience.
49. Woo, woo. What? No,
I think it's
so
48.
how long have you been in Arizona? I don't know how long you've been
It's
in Arizona.
2018.
Really?
I mean 2002. 18 years.
Okay, so you've been here 18 years. Okay. And then before that, you were in Nebraska?
And before that, I was in New York City, and before that, San Francisco.
Oh, can't remember all that. Where's your?
When I tell them
Oh,
I'm the best lawyers in America and super lawyers and all that stuff, you can tell Matt. Doesn't
I
really
like what
matter.
I like the best. I like your latest book, How Not to Be a Stupid Manager.
That's a good book.
I gotta get that book. I gotta give that book away to folks.
Yeah.
I would like to read it.
Who would?
I would. Ellen would.
Yeah, I think I'll get that for the office.
Okay, great.
And pass it
I'll
around.
even sign it.
Oh, nice. That'd be nice.
I would love that.
Not a problem.
Did you grow up in Nebraska?
No. I grew up actually in Canada in Syracuse, New York.
Oh, it's cold, man.
I was actually born in Germany, so
I kind of remember.
English is my second language.
German is?
German is my first language.
Oh, it is.
English is my second language.
That's what you said. I didn't hear what you said. Oh, wow. So do you communicate, you know, using German much now, like with family or extended family?
They all speak English better than I speak German.
Do you get to Germany much?
Been there a couple years, just 2 years ago we were there.
What part of Germany?
We were in Berlin and Munich this time.
Oh, nice.
Been there several different places all over the country.
Yeah.
I was actually born up in the north area in Bremen.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay. All right. So looks like we have 14 and folks, I'm going to wait just to get, I don't want to start and people, you know, are still dying because they're not, it's 11:57 by my computer. All right. I think I have, Yep, I have what we have. Tom, do you have any questions?
I have no questions. I'm just happy I'm online.
Yeah, and I have to remember not to use my other computer. I have to use, so I'll share the screen with the slides. And so we'll be on top, right? And then the slides will be in the, why don't I just do that now? So do you guys see I need it in the slideshow. Slideshow. I want slideshow. There we go. Now I can't see the chat or anything, so but I see down below. Yeah, so we're good to go. This is April. We're recording this too, Tom, so we'll share that with you at the end after.
Okay, that's kind of fun.
Yeah, because you can, you know, refer to it or use it how you like. Let's see, 1 minute and counting down. Have you done many of these in the last week or two or few
The
weeks?
last month, I've probably done 4 or 5 Zoom meetings with clients and trade groups like the Arizona Builders Alliance, people like that.
Well, that's cool. Yeah. I do Zoom meetings every week, but I haven't hosted before, but I've hosted, this is the third one I've hosted.
Cool.
Yeah. So it's good because as the updates come out, I'm just kind of letting those be known about the loans. And then obviously the unemployment side of things too. Have there been any recent, I know that the SBA put out some new loan stuff for affinity businesses and stuff, but has there been any updates with the ADES or the Department of Labor for you?
Not that I know of. I did send out a blurb to you on the unemployment compensation DOL material. I sent that to you yesterday, I think.
Okay, I don't think I had a chance to look at that. So whatever you have to say about that would be awesome. I
Yeah,
think
we put the
just kinda
Mesh
start-
Parks put together lots of different updates. So in case people want them, they can just email them to me, and you can mention that somewhere down the road.
that you'll provide updates.
For nothing.
Okay, I'll let them post that, their email address maybe, or email you directly, whatever it is they want to do to
Yeah.
get to request that. If they ask it from our office, we'll forward it to you.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, so I'm just gonna get a little started. So just some preliminary information. Welcome everyone. This is how your business can beat COVID-19. This is session 3. I am excited to welcome Tom Cope from Mesh Clark and Rothschild, who is an employment attorney among other many wonderful talents. Speaking German and writing wonderful books like How Not to Be a Stupid Manager, which is definitely on my book list to get. Tom has been in Tucson for what, 18 years, Tom?
That's right.
And myself, I've been here for 7 years, and Tom has a wealth of experience, 49 years.
48. I think it's
40.
48. I have to count again.
Okay, 48 years, and he is in Tucson, as I said, with Mesh Clark and Rothschild. He's been Best Lawyers in America, listed there, Arizona's Finest Lawyers, Southwest Super Lawyers. He's the author of The Executive Guide to Employment Practices and the 2013 supplement on the Age Discrimination in Employment Act for the Arizona Employment Law Handbook. So he comes with a wealth of credentials, and I'm really pleased that he's here to help us look at some of the new laws under the Families First Act, and to help businesses. I mean, the primary focus is to help the businesses out there, but we also have employee related information, obviously, that relates to the employer. And so as far as myself here, I'm Christine Ferraris with A. Ferraris Law, and we work with consumers and businesses, usually in contract disputes and when there's fraud related. But for myself, I've been heavily involved in looking at both of these acts as it relates to businesses, to understand it and to get information out there like today's webinar to help guide business owners in Arizona and elsewhere. Without further delay, I'd like to jump in. I'll be controlling. To administrative matters. If you are attending by phone, if you would hit *9, that will raise your hand and you can ask a question or submit a question from what I understand. It will raise your hand in some capacity so that Ellen with my office will be able to receive your question and then put it to both Tom and I. Feel free to submit your questions in the chat column, which is next to the slide. Hopefully you're seeing that. If you can't see it, you'll have to look under on your particular controls under more and open up that chat area and submit your question, and Ellen will let us know. And you feel free to do that as we're going through the slides. We will have an open question and answer at the end. But like, as I said, feel free to ask your question as it relates to the topic we're discussing. All right, I'm going to jump right in. There's a little bit of an introduction, Tom and myself. So the CARES Act, this stands for the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act. It provides a lot of benefits, the primary ones being tax breaks and loans that are federally guaranteed by the government. There's been lots and lots of information out there, but I'm hoping to distill it down to the real important points. And then hopefully you'll have some questions related to information that you've received or questions you have relative to your circumstances. And as I said, go ahead and put those in the chat box. The disaster loan, this is the what we call the emergency injury disaster loan. And this is promulgated by the SBA and the Treasury together. They're putting out these loans for-profit businesses and for nonprofit businesses with fewer than 500 employees. Now they have that 500 employees standard there. Doesn't mean it doesn't apply to folks with more than 500 employees. The SBA and Treasury have put out some guidelines and frequently asked questions explaining that, essentially, that businesses with affinity relationships and other franchisees and franchisors, there is particular circumstances that you need to look at to see whether or not you can apply and your limits. It applies also to sole proprietors. It's not just for formally recognized businesses like LLCs and corporations, those who act as independent contractors, who are self-employed, tribal business concerns, and veteran organizations. These are all in the CARES Act and they're listed in there. As I said, the per physical location relative to accommodation in the food industry, that's where that limitation applies. It's really a broad sort of ability to get this loan. Normally SBA loans are really strict and regulated, and there's a lot of hurdles to jump through, but they've basically waived those hurdles for these loans to get money to folks to help protect the payroll.
Which is different than the Payroll Protection Act.
Yes, the payroll protection program is different than this EIDL loan that we're talking about. We'll be talking about the PPP program in just a minute. So there are several different loans. There's bridge loans, there's the EIDL loan. This website that I have down here, if you go to the SBA.gov website and under funding programs, you'll see I think there's about 4 different sets of loans that you're eligible for. And so you really want to understand what there's been a lot of talk about the PPP and the EIDL because of the forgiveness portion of it, but there are other loans that may make more sense for you. So it makes a lot of sense to be strategic in your planning in where you want to put your time and energy, and speaking with an SBA counselor could help you that way. If you're speaking with a lender only, you really want to make sure you're asking the right questions to make sure that they understand exactly what your situation is and what other funding there is out there, because there are new lenders and there are lenders that dedicate themselves to doing SBA loans. There's a variety of experience, just as there are lawyers. Generally speaking, these are the items that when there's a disaster that the loans are supposed to be covering: damaged property, real estate, machinery and equipment, similar things that you would expect. But with the loans that are coming out, that have come out now, what they're allowing for is really the key focus is protecting employees and protecting the payroll. So again, here's the EIDL, the Economic Injury and Disaster Loan. You can get a max loan of $2 million. You can have up to 30 years to repay it. 3.75% is the max interest for profits. And then for the nonprofit side, it's 2.75. You have deferred payment of the loan for 6 months, which is a great benefit. It can be used for sick leave, payroll, and increased costs due to COVID, rent, mortgage, other debt obligations, that's also in there. What's been really got a lot of people excited was this $10,000 initial advance. Initially, the SBA was promising that this advance would go out 3 days after you applied. I can tell you, my firm applied. I want to say we applied right when it issued, the new application issued. Some folks applied in March, and then they were told that they're going to be okay, but it was strongly suggested to redo the application, which is basically takes 15 minutes and this goes directly through the SBA. It does not go through a lender. You submit the application at the SBA website, and long as you know some key numbers in your financials, which aren't real complicated, your cost of goods, your gross profits, or your net profits, I can't remember which, but if you go there, it shouldn't take much more than 15 minutes if you have access to that information. And that is the initial consideration for that initial advance that is supposed to be, being issued to folks. I think some people have been issued these funds. I know my firm hasn't, at least as far as I checked yesterday. Who knows? Maybe when we get done and I'll see some money in my bank account, or the firm's bank account rather. But the more recent information that I've heard is that instead of just being a $10,000 amount, they're looking at how many employees you have, and they're going to give it up to the $10,000, $1,000 for each employee. Now, I've heard that.
Can I jump in a second?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, so I'm the past chair of a nonprofit, and we got the $1,000 per employee.
You did.
So they got like $4,000. So it was all the employees that they had got covered for $1,000.
What, Tom, when did you get that? Or when did you apply? I'm curious.
Day one.
So April 2nd, 1st, I guess, right? Yeah.
Probably April 2nd. I think that was a Friday. I can't remember, but the executive director applied, and I just heard today, maybe yesterday, that we got the money.
So they probably got it within the last day or two, you think?
Yeah, they got it this week.
Okay, I'll be definitely looking for myself. So the interesting thing about this is that you can take this, whatever money you get granted under this loan, you can roll into the Paycheck Protection Program, which has a 1% interest, which we're going to move, I don't know. Yeah, here we go. So Paycheck Protection Program, PPP. Mm-hmm. Okay. No, Ellen asked me if Tom, are you able to see the slide presentation?
Yes, I can see the slide fine.
Okay, I don't know if anybody can't see it very well who's attending, please put it in the chat box if you're not able to see it. So as far as the Paycheck Protection Program, this is for the program that they've decided is a covered period between February 15th and June 30th. And one thing I should have prefaced when I started the slideshow is that the provisions that are in these laws and acts and so forth could change. There's interim guidelines that are being issued. There was another one that issued yesterday. Things are changing and moving as the interpretation of the acts comes through the SBA, because a lot of what's been provided for by Congress, the SBA and the lenders hadn't had experience directly with before. They've done disaster loans before, but not with these waivers, not with these particular Paycheck Protection Program specific kinds of provisions. And so everybody's been scrambling to catch up, and that's why there's been some delay in some of the lenders being able to accept applications and get the word out. A lot of what needs to be done between the lenders and SBA has to go through SBA's procedures and portals and getting all that technology to work and to speak to each other takes time. So, but for the covered period, so you can apply now and you can keep applying, but the covered period is February 15th to June 30th. And that covered period is your payroll during that period. What they're, in terms of looking at forgiveness. Now, the loans are going to be available through June 30th. So I'm sorry, I get distracted, but I'm getting messages. So you have loans available under the Paycheck Protection Program, and they're going to look, depending on your particular situation. Now, if you're an independent, a contractor, they're going to look at your particular records of your income, not necessarily distributions. not necessarily other ways that you've paid yourself, but they're looking to see how much you've paid and you can record in terms of cash.
So Christine, I think we need to define independent contractor really. I think in reality, what it means is a sole proprietor who contracts him or herself out to someone else, but they're really a sole proprietor and that they may or may not have any employees working for them, but they have their own business of some kind.
Yes. And the interesting thing about that, Tom, is that they identify each of those, though, in the act. They identify independent contractor, sole proprietor separately, even though at least from a legal standpoint, we see them very similar, or if not the same. But when a sole proprietor is just working for himself, and not necessarily having employees, as Tom said, the independent contractor may be working just as a consultant and not having employees as well. Whereas the sole proprietor could have employees, right? In my eyes, independent contractor doesn't have employees, but a sole proprietor could. And I'm going to give you this particular example. For example, for an LLC, and I'm using this with my firm, I have an LLC, but I haven't, submitted paperwork, at least not at this point, to be recognized as an S corporation. So I'm a disregarded entity under the eyes of the IRS, but I have W-2 employees. So what's going to happen, as far as I can tell at this point, and that may change, is that I'm going to have to file for myself as a sole proprietor under the LLC, and then file for the LLC for the employees under for the employees themselves for that particular payroll. I might have to file a separate loan. I haven't received clear guidance on that, but that's what I've been told. So I guess what the takeaway from this is that depending on your situation, and if you have employees or if you don't, how you've paid yourself, if you've taken mostly distributions rather than a wage, you're going to want to decide which loan is going to be better for you. But
if you don't have payroll, you can't go the PPP route because it's only to cover payroll and benefits and things of that nature. So
right, but if you're a sole proprietor, it's not considered the payroll.
Correct.
But you can apply as a sole proprietor if you can show you paid yourself. It's going to be a different sort of documentation and
right.
and what's going to be required of you to seek your loss in salary,
or to cover.
If you're still continuing to pay yourself and from your business to try to keep going and to seek loans to do that, then you're going to have to show if you want to get forgiveness. Now I've got to keep focused on that because a lot of times we all want to rush and get the loans, but if you want to get forgiveness, that's what's allowed under this, and it's up to 10 million, depending on the amount of payroll you have during this 8-week period. All of that can be forgiven if you're using it for payroll. Now you can use these proceeds for other things, but if you want to get forgiveness, you really should be using it for payroll. There
is a question.
Yeah,
okay.
Let me answer the question. So the question is, what if you are an S Corp? I do have documentation showing I paid myself. I think you're going to be qualified for the PPE or PPP.
Yeah, it's going to be easier for those folks who don't have specific documentation. It's going to be a bit more of a challenge, and you're going to want to get guidance on how to do that. But I know there is the CPAs and all the folks, the lawyers and that are focused on helping people put their applications together are going to know what's necessary. We haven't been given a lot of guidelines for the self-employed independent contractors, but there is documentation that you will be able to collect to prove what your payroll or wages were, so that you can apply for this Paycheck Protection Program loan and seek their forgiveness.
Yeah, good point. Good question.
Yeah, that was a good question. back, I just wanted to say, so there's no SBE. There's one thing that's really important about this too. There's no collateral or personal guarantee with these Paycheck Protection Program loans. And that's not with the EIDL loans, it's up to, I think, 200,000. You don't need to show personal guarantee. You don't have to provide personal guarantees or collateral. But for the PPP program, nothing. No collateral, no personal guarantee, which is a huge thing for folks. And it's in the act. I read it. I can't cite to it specifically unless I put it somewhere else. But there's no income tax ramification. You know, when there's debt forgiveness, a lot of times with your income taxes, you'll get a 1099, and I can't remember which letter it is, but where it's attributed to you as income when you have debt forgiveness. With these forgiveness programs, that it's been written right into the act that you're not going to have that sort of tax implication. And so generally speaking, it's 2.5 times your average payroll cost. Now for new businesses, that can be January 1st to February 29th, 2020. If you had payroll or were your ongoing business last year, they're gonna look at the average over the calendar year. There's been a third option too, that it's the year before you submit your application. So there's these 3 things that I don't know if you have the choice. I think it's gonna depend on the lender, and maybe some more interim rules that are going to be issued by the SBA. But those 3 ways of calculating the payroll have been put out there.
So in our experience, we found the lenders would love to have all of 2019, but we've also had companies that had a good first quarter and have had more money coming in and paid more money out to employees in the first quarter of 2020. And so they've been able to use the 2020 numbers up to the time when they make their application.
Yeah, and that's for me. I hired 2 employees right after all this stuff started. You know, beginning of March. I wish I would have hired them February 15th and before, but they came. But that's still a benefit because I'm going to be using most of that money for payroll, so that there's a likelihood that I'll have more forgiven, right? So even if you didn't have the employees right on February 15th, if you have hired or if you've maintained them, you know, or, you know, they're getting extra compensation before paid leave or what have you, that all goes into that payroll calculation.
So we have a question. Realtors are independent contractors and often PLLCs that do not pay themselves as employees. So I think that would fall under what Christine was talking about, the independent contractor rule, that if you're an independent contractor in that context, that you'd be able to get the loan.
Yeah, it just depends on how you paid yourself. The word on the street, at least as far as I've heard, is if you paid yourself in distributions, that's not going to be considered. They're really looking at wages and what can be construed as cash, you know, that you received as part of compensation. And there is $100,000 limit in terms of the payroll calculation, but that only applies to salary. I pointed this out to a group of attorneys that we kind of get together and hash through all this. I said that limitation doesn't apply to the, for example, group healthcare benefits, insurance, retirement benefits. The $100,000 limit applies to just the cash. So let's say you have a $100,000 employee, or you're a $100,000 self-employed or consultant. You know, if you still get other benefits, that can be added. The $100,000 only applies to wages and salary. The non-cash sort of salary isn't limited to that 100K cap. And that came out, that was acknowledged by the Department of Labor, that particular question in their frequently asked questions that issued within the last week or so. So I put down here the sum of documented wages, income, and as an employee of a closely held business or from self-employment or similar compensation, and that amount that is not considered more than $100,000, and I should put there in cash, prorated for the covered period. So whatever you're going to be able to pay yourself, or whatever you paid yourself to come up with the loan amount, you want to use mostly for payroll or payroll types of things during this period to be able to get the maximum forgiveness benefit.
And here's the situation. If you don't use it for payroll, then you'll have to pay it back.
Yeah.
So there's a definition of what's covered I think there's going to be a slide coming up about for what you can use the money. And I will
Yes.
tell you in advance of that slide, I've had lots and lots of people ask me if workers' compensation insurance is considered part of the payroll cost, and it is not.
I didn't know that. This is a slide that I added, Tom. So draws and distributions are not, at least as far as the guidance that's been coming out more recently, are not considered payroll costs. And it sounds like workers' compensation isn't.
Not covered. It's not part of wages.
Yeah, you want to be looking at no, this is blocking my slide. Your Schedule C, 2019 Schedule C for LLC partners, that K1 box 14, which should be, I think, same as box 1. My memory serves me correctly. I put an example in there, and I'm happy to share some of this information afterwards. If you have additional questions after this whole, and you weren't able to ask your question or something pops up, Tom said he was going to be available. And if you submit something to my office for Tom or directly to Tom, we're both available for follow-up questions.
We have a question now. I don't know if you want to take it now. And Ryan, welcome to the program. What portion of group health insurance, healthcare premiums is included in the payroll cost? If the employer pays 75% of the employee premium, employee pays 25% of the employee premium, and 100% of any included spouse, what's considered payroll costs? It's whatever the company is paying. So your 75% is what your costs are going to be considered wages under the PPP.
Yeah, that's what I understand. It's the gross, cost that's apportioned to that particular payroll item, if you will. I am surprised that workers' comp isn't included, Tom.
Well, let me read you the definition, right? So here's the definition of insurance. Payment required for the provisions of group health care benefits, including insurance premiums. There is nothing about workers' compensation in that. And we've taken the position that workers' comp is not part of the PPP. And I think that.
So there could be an argument that it is, since it's not excluded?
Well, you could argue anything you want, but I mean, if you're going to be a conservative.
Yeah.
I give conservative as opposed to liberal advice when it comes to stuff like this, because first of all, there's not a regulation.
Right.
But unless, to me, if I'm looking at the statute, and I've got a little blurb here on it, that, I mean, it talks about salary, wage, commission, or similar compensation. That's not workers' comp. Payment of cash tip or equivalent. That's not workers' comp. Payment of vacation, parental, family, medical, or sick leave. Not workers' comp. Payment of any retirement benefit. Not workers' comp.
No.
So unless, as far as I'm concerned, unless it's enumerated in the statute,
Right.
or the PPP, I'm not going to tell people that it's covered because I don't think it is.
Right. Okay. But it could be you could still use the proceeds for it, but I don't think it's part of the calculation.
It's not going to be part of the calculation. And if you use it for something that's other than the 7 or 8 items, you may wind up having to pay that part back.
Right.
At a 1% rate as opposed to having it as a loan forgiveness. I mean, that's your downside, right? If somebody audits you and says, by the way, workers' comp was not covered, you should have listened to Tom Cope, then you're going to have to pay that money back. At a 1% loan, so.
Right, yeah, and it's deferred. So people can use these things for other things outside payroll, but again, as Tom said and reiterated, you want to make sure to get the maximum benefit for forgiveness, and you more than likely are going to need guidance on that. And the lender, I hopefully will be helpful that way, or some other professional like Tom or myself, where you're trying to understand exactly what to strategize and plan, because that's what it's key here.
But I would seriously not buy a business truck with it. I mean, I think that would go way beyond the scope of what we're trying to do here.
Okay, so the lenders are going to provide obviously guidance too about what they're going to accept in terms of documents and things, but documents are going to be key. These are some of the things that I pulled from the CARES Act, and I do actually have a copy of the CARES Act, Tom. I've been reading it. This is the CARES Act.
You just killed a small tree.
So yeah, so that's why there's definitely things that they're pretty clear in there when you do read them, but there's some other things that you don't hear about in terms of incentives and things, and what the Congress has directed the SBA to consider, in terms of women owned businesses and businesses that are less than 2 years, that sort of thing. But the takeaway is that the loan proceeds, if you want forgiveness, should be used to retain workers and maintain your payroll.
And let me give everybody a resource that they can go to for free. It's called the United States Chamber of Commerce. Just go to their website. They have got a wealth of information on the U.S. Chamber of Commerce website on all these laws and regulations, I can tell you. And we provided a lot of updates for our clients. And I'm more than happy, again, you can click on our website and look for me on our website, which is at the very first slide. Or you can and then email me saying you're a part of this program, and I'll send you the updates with no charge.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Tom. I'm going to suggest too, the Arizona Chamber of Commerce, they've been putting on webinars and things as well. There's a lot of information out there, and I know for myself, sometimes it's hard to choose who to go to and to distill it down and digest it down. Some of it's really superficial, but I have to tell you, I learn a little bit from everybody that I listen to. I know that the SB, I think it's the SBDC, they have webinars coming out, and they're the agency. So there's the Arizona, this AZ, Ellen, will you put this in the chat? azsbdc.net. They're putting on some webinars and workshops and training. And I know the Arizona Chamber is putting on some training about how to fill out an application. So the maximum size, did I go too far? I think we're good. I think, how are we at time? I'll move along here. So the maximum size of the loan is 10 million. If you're in business February 15th to the June 30th, 2019, your max loan is equal to 250% of your average monthly payroll. Again, there's different ways of calculating that payroll if you weren't in business at that time. If you employ seasonal workers, like I said, that's another alternative to use, that January 1st to February 29th, 2020. If you took out an EIDL loan between February 15th, 2020 and June 30th, 2020, you can refinance that. So you get that 3.575 in the EIDL, but you can refinance it into the PPP. Deferment, PPP can be deferred up to a year. I think that was in the last slide. And then the EIDL up to 6 months in terms of the repayment. Tax relief, there's definitely tax relief here. I had a CPA on last week, and we went more into that. If you're interested in listening to that particular webinar, let Ellen or put it in the chat or whatever, that if you're interested, then we can send you that link to that webinar. But there's definitely tax relief. I've already received notice from the ADES, the Arizona Department of Economic Security, about how I can delay payroll taxes. I think it's up till June or something. Yeah, I mean, you can read this. I don't really need to go too much into that one because I want Tom to be able to get to the paid leave. But there are updates on the SBA.gov website, the U.S. Treasury's website, and in the Arizona Department of Economic Security. There, you can actually sign up to get updates on their websites. Yep, this is the update I just received. The due date for filing tax and wage report, I forgot to put it in here, has been extended to June 1st. There's no action required to be eligible for this extension. It's just automatic. Doesn't stop you from paying it, but if you do want to delay your payment and reporting, you have until June 1st to do that, at least as far as now. And then the IRS has some other tax relief that's available. So I'm gonna,
So we have another question that I'm going to read, and you can weigh in on it, Christine, as well. I have a part-time independent contractor position that allowed me to make $20,000 last year while I started my business. Do I qualify for anything? I think the answer to that would be to talk to your bank and find out what, and again, I think to Christine's point, how did you pay yourself? Did the contractor did the person you worked for just give you a check for 20,000, or over three or 4 month period, total 20,000, and that was just a gross amount of money and you put in your bank account? That may or may not qualify. It doesn't sound like it might qualify if that's the example, but I think the smart move would actually be to talk to your banker on that. Because, I mean, yeah, you're an independent contractor, but the question is going to be, you made 20,000 from somebody. The question is, how much of that was your expenses? How much of that was your take home? I mean, after tax, you probably have to pay taxes on it, I'm sure. So
yeah.
that's almost an accountant question in a way as well.
It is. I mean, there are some folks, CPAs, lawyers, who are focused on these particular and getting applications ready for folks. So I would say, you know, actually, if you have somebody that prepares your taxes or helps prepare your taxes, maybe ask them. If they don't know, they probably can put you in touch with someone. The lenders are overwhelmed right now with trying to ask questions. A lot of the questions, I don't think they really know. As I said, that Arizona SBDC site, I listened to a webinar from those guys. They know what's going on with the SBA and how you qualify with SBA. Granted, the independent contractor, self-employed is a whole new basket of folks that are eligible for these loans. Not to say that they weren't eligible before, but lots of things have been waived. And so getting the right documentation together is what and we haven't received a lot of guidance on that yet from the SBA as to what particular, but anything you can show or demonstrate, you know, that you paid yourself from that money is going to help you. But you may still be eligible for the EIDL loan. Maybe not, as I said in the beginning, there are 4 different types of loans, and go to that SBA.gov website to see exactly what loan you might be considering, and then have a conversation about your eligibility with the right person, whether it be the SBDC, the Arizona Chamber, your local chamber might be able to put you in touch with someone to help you make that decision and strategize. Families first. I'll go through the slide, Tom, and you can jump in.
Okay.
So the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. This is another act that went into effect April 1st, and it goes through December 31st, 2020. That's right, Tom, right? It's still
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes, that's right.
All right. And it's to support employers so they can allow employees to take paid leave, either for the employee's own health needs or to care for family members. So it expanded, you know, the paid sick leave. And so we call that emergency paid sick leave, EPSL, expanded the Family Medical Leave Act, and we go with EFMLA for that. The unemployment insurance, just generally speaking, it's kind of different for the states, how they qualify folks, but the federal supplement is up to 13 weeks. Is that, and then there's a lot of extra stuff that it could be longer, I think. Right, Tom?
Yeah, it depends on the individual situation.
Yeah, okay. The one number that I feel confident is that up to $600 extra in benefits because the federal government is providing that.
And that's over and above the state benefit.
Yes, in addition to, got it. I haven't done or heard much about this small business exemption, other than I've heard that it's going to be a real tough barrier to overcome, to show that unless you're really going to go bankrupt or out of business if you provide these benefits.
Right. So yeah. So really, what the situation is you're going to have to prove to some government official that if you provide the 80 hours of sick pay, the emergency sick leave, that your company is basically going to go down the tubes.
Right.
And I don't know if the next slide shows it, but there should be 6 exact reasons why you get the emergency sick leave. There are only 6 reasons for that 80 hours of leave. And
I was just looking for see if I have it. I don't know if I have the reason.
okay, well, I think I have them off the top of my head. So the
Okay,
first reason is that you have the coronavirus and you have to stay home.
right.
Second one is you're taking care of someone that has a coronavirus and you're staying home. The third reason is you've been under a quarantine order by a state or federal government official to be quarantined at home. Governor Ducey's stay-at-home order of last week or the week before is not such a quarantine order and will not be considered making anybody eligible for the 80 hours of pay. The other one is if your child care situation deteriorates to the point where schools are closed or your care provider can't come and take care of your child, you get 80 hours of the emergency sick leave. And I think that's 6. I may have missed one,
I
but
think
I
you
think
got the, yeah, I'm just looking at the act here, the Emergency Paid Leave Act under, and that I think you did. And then when folks are working at home and things, there's some kind of intermingle in there that we want to probably.
the other thing I will tell you is that I had an employer tell me that his employee wanted to take the 80 hours of paid leave because of the childcare situation. Turns out his wife was a teacher, or is a teacher, and she's staying home with the child anyway. So that would not qualify for the 80 hours because there's not a childcare issue in that home. So a lot of these are going to have to be done on an individual fact basis, and people are going to have to show that they actually have it's no different than you can say under the Family Medical Leave Act that you can actually ask for documentation that they need to have child care, or that they have been voluntarily told by, the 6th one is a physician has told you to voluntarily quarantine yourself until they can figure out if you have the actual virus. So, I mean, all of that can be documented with medical information and medical records. So, and you're as an employer allowed to ask for that material.
Yeah,
document somebody's face value of it.
Yeah, you have to have documentation especially if you want to get any of the benefits from the government for these provisions in the act.
Well, and don't forget that if you give that time off, that you get a credit for that on your Social Security or your payroll tax bill later on down the road.
Right, exactly.
The problem is for small employers, paying out 80 hours or 2 weeks of pay and no money coming in could work an undue hardship, and that's where you have to make that application. And I mean, it's easy to say I'm going to get a credit down the road, but if you can't pay the money up front to begin with, then it doesn't really matter, does it?
Right.
Have a credit.
I have CARES Act unemployment benefits, but it's under the FFCRA. So the paid leave expansion, I have up here, it's up to 80 hours. And as far as employees can't be told they have to use their paid leave that's already provided to them through the employer.
Correct. You cannot force your employees to take their accumulated or accrued PTO or sick leave in advance of the 80 hours. The 80 hours is going to be in addition to whatever they have on the books in your business.
Okay, so let's say an employee has has documented, for a COVID reason that of the 6 that you cited there, they would automatically go into that emergency paid sick leave.
If they ask for it.
Okay.
I mean, absolutely. If they say, look, my child school is closed. I've got no caretaker for the rest of the day. I don't know what to do with myself other than have to go home and take care of my child. That's going to qualify, and you're going to have to give them the 80 hours.
Okay. But do you have to get the documentation first?
Well, I mean, it wouldn't hurt. I mean, but if right now everybody knows that every school in Arizona is closed. So I don't know that documentation on that.
No.
But if somebody says, you know, my doctor told me because I got a sniffle and a cough and a cold that I need to stay home because I could possibly have the virus, I would suggest that that person get a letter from their doctor saying, I've advised this person to self-quarantine until we find out what their problem is. I would definitely ask for that documentation.
Right. Now, people do get homeschooled, right? And so, you know, it may be helpful to understand, to just to have some documentation for what, just to have it, right? I always say it's better to have documentation than not. Obviously, yeah, we know that if they went to public school, that, yeah, the schools are closed. And so that's a kind of a given we can download from the internet. But to Tom's point, yeah, if they're asking for specific medical leave to care for somebody that has a COVID-19 diagnosed medical issue, or they themselves have been, but one thing that has come up in past webinars that we've done was whether or not, if employee is concerned about the environment or where they're working and they don't want to go in because they don't feel that enough has been, or they just fear working in the environment, and you know, you're still open for business, for how that would be addressed. And I don't know if you've dealt with that, Tom, at all.
Oh yeah, we deal with that all the time because people are like, well, I want to self-isolate. I don't want to come to work. Or that's not one of the 6 reasons under the act. So you cannot give them the 80 hours. You can absolutely give them their sick leave. You can give them their PTO. You can have them use that up if they want, but absolutely not covered under this statute, and
Right.
will not be considered. You won't be on the hook for those 80 hours if somebody just says, "I'm not coming to work. I'm working from home." And I
Right.
actually have a medical provider that I represent, and they've had that situation, even though the person that wanted to go home and work from home was not in the medical side, but it was in the admin side. And they
Right.
said, nope, you can sure take your vacation, you can take your sick leave. And the other thing is that some people are not set up to work at home.
Right.
When we started working at home in the law firm, I had to have the VPN number put on my computer at home so I could log into my work computer. And so,
Yeah.
but not everybody has the ability to do that. So
No.
some jobs that you may have will not be available to work from home.
Right.
So that
Yeah.
may be
No, I had to
a
order extra
non-starter.
equipment. Yeah, I had to order extra equipment because folks weren't set up at home. And so that's going to be my COVID related expense. Part-time employees,
But no employer is required to do that unless
no.
they really want to.
No, they are not. Part-time employees are entitled to leave for the average number of work hours in a 2-week period. If the part-time employee is normally scheduled to work set hours, he or she receives those hours. If those normal hours scheduled are unknown, or if the part-time employee's schedule varies, you may use a 6-month average to calculate their average daily hours. Such a part-time employee may take EPSL for this number of hours per day up to a 2-week period, and may take the EFMLA for the same number of hours per day up to 10 weeks after that. Does that jibe with what you?
Right. So just so you know, I mean, people keep asking me the same question, and this is an interesting question. What do I do about the Family Medical Leave Act? Look, the only thing the act changed, and I emphasize only, is for all of the qualifying reasons for FMLA, and by the way, you have to have over 50 employees to qualify for the FMLA, so don't anybody with under 50 employees get all jacked up about the FMLA. So if you have over 50 employees in the FMLA, the only thing that changed, instead of having a serious medical condition, is the requalifying event. You now have a new qualifying event for FMLA, and that is childcare problems because school or childcare went away. And so that's a new reason to be able to take the Family Medical Leave Act. And instead of having to work 1,250 hours, you only have to have been there 30 days. So that's the only real major change for the Family Medical Leave Act. So if a person doesn't qualify under my child is staying home and I don't have a care provider, if that doesn't apply, then they get the normal Family Medical Leave Act qualifications.
So now that EPSL, there's not a requirement of time in, right? That's automatically if they've worked 1 day or 2 days.
I think they have to work for your company 30 days.
No, that's just for the EFMLA. The
Oh, you're
EPS,
talking about FMLA. Oh, yeah, for the EFMLA? Yeah. If you're just talking about the sick leave, no, there's no
requirement for time in.
time, there's no time frame for the emergency sick leave, no.
Okay. Just want to make sure. That's what I understood.
No, I missed the question, sorry.
No, that's all right. I probably didn't say it clear enough. As I said before, the qualifying reason for requesting leave and supporting documentation such as the quarantine or isolation order, as Tom pointed out, or a healthcare provider who has advised the employee of self-quarantine. Statement that the employee is unable to work, which includes telework. So if they can't do telework, they have to document why and submit that to you. And then obviously the dates for the leave that's requested. Now you can come up, I mean, employers and employees can come up with things that go outside of this, right? That's okay.
Yeah.
But you can't withhold obviously leave, but you can do, you can somehow work with the telework and the leave. I know that
You can be more generous than what the act requires. You
right.
just can't be less generous than what the act requires.
Well said. I'm turning it to unemployment benefits. Have you talked much about that, Tom?
Well, Governor Ducey has changed the Arizona statute a little bit by saying that they don't have to wait their normal week and they don't have to look for work. They have to be qualified. It has to be a COVID-19 reason for the unemployment, like a furlough or a layoff. And if that happens, then they don't have to wait a week. They can get it right away, effective immediately after application, of course. But the unemployment compensation, the DES website crashed a while back, and I think it's back up and running because most 98% of the people are applying online because
Right.
the offices are not open.
Right.
But they closed it, so they got to do it online. So the website kind of crashed, but now I think it's back up, and they can get their unemployment benefits right away.
And my understanding is that unemployment benefits for those who do have reduced hours, there can be some workout with that where if folks aren't completely furloughed, but they're working less and they're working from home or whatever, the unemployment based on whatever they're receiving in wages, reduced wages versus what they're eligible for unemployment benefits, they can apply for unemployment benefits.
It would be a pro rata type
Right.
percentage basis of their unemployment. So if they're getting a 50% pay cut, they're going to get 50% unemployment benefits.
Right. And so what normally independent contractors and the self-employed, because they don't pay into the unemployment system, aren't eligible for these, but they are now. And,
right. And there are the reasons that here's how it has to be in your slide.
Yeah. So you want to be mindful of what you want to be saying, in your, and I don't know what the current application is. I know that they block certain things out now they don't, or they've blocked out, or have you looked for work and that sort of thing in some of the information that you have to submit on a weekly basis. But I don't think that they've changed it altogether. So I don't know how clear or confusing it is to actually file, and if it's been adjusted well enough for the independent contractor and the self-employed.
So the question I have is, I just came up on the board. If an employee is utilizing the 80 hours of EPSL to care for a child whose school is closed, do they receive 100% of the wage or 2/3? I think it's 2/3, but I'd have to check that.
I think it's 2/3 too. I do, but I would want to know which paid leave. Are they using their accrued paid leave? Because then that would be.
They're using the ESPL, the emergency paid sick
Okay. Yeah, I have
think
that.
that- I
I
think
had
that-
the calculation for that somewhere.
I'm almost sure that's 2/3, but just contact me. The person who asked that question, just contact me. I think you have my email address.
Yeah, it's 2/3 their average hours, right?
Right,
Yeah.
if they're an hourly employee.
Yeah, if they're hourly employee. I thought that I had that in there somewhere, but maybe not. 2-week period. No. So next time I'll have the list of the qualifications, and then I'll put in that calculation for calculating the EPSL. That can be helpful. But the ADS has great, they have frequently asked questions on their website that actually is pretty good. It's been updated to incorporate the FFCRA. So this is my, I think this is my last slide. Yeah. So lay off or leave, what choice should I make? I think, Tom, you can probably speak to this. It depends on an employer's cash flow, employee's position, how the business is doing, the possibility of employee doing other work, taking that offline business online, employee's family situation. I mean, I don't know when you strategize with folks, Tom, or I would imagine some of these things come into the discussion.
Well, all of them kind of come into the discussion, but the big question I always get is what's the difference between layoff and furlough?
Okay.
And so for unemployment purposes, there is no difference. But in reality, a furlough is a temporary cessation of work. So you're putting them on furlough, which means you're probably going to bring them back when the economy gets better or your business picks up.
Right.
A layoff is pretty much that employee's gone and not coming back.
Right.
And the only thing I will tell you is when it comes to layoffs, in other words, you're basically terminating people, is make sure that if you have more than 15 employees, you're covered under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, that you don't lay off all the older workers, all the Hispanic workers, all the women. I mean, watch out for protected classes, and that your mix of people that you're laying off is equal to your mix in the workforce. And so, I mean, you may have a criteria last in, first out. That would work because that doesn't discriminate against anybody. But be careful if you're laying off more than 2 or 3 people. I always worry for my clients whether or not they're laying off too many protected workers in one category over another.
Yeah, and a little bit speaking to that, and this might not apply for the smaller businesses, and I don't know how that WARN Act. I've heard that where you have to give proper notice if you're laying folks off. I mean, how does it? I know
the WARN Act is for big employers of 500 employees, and they're laying off 50 people in one location. I mean.
Okay.
So unless you're Raytheon or you're state of Arizona or somebody that's covered, you probably don't have to worry about the WARN Act too much. And if you're laying off your entire 50 people in one place, that may trigger the WARN Act, but generally I found that it doesn't trigger. A normal small employer will not trigger the WARN Act.
And that's all about giving them proper notice, right? That generally speaking.
60-day notice.
Okay. Oh.
So you got to keep them on the payroll for 60 days.
And so that act hasn't changed with all this other.
Has not changed.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, I'm just going to throw out there, education and retraining employees and trying to keep them on payroll in some capacity can be beneficial, and rethinking things, with relative to technology. I mean, a lot of us who I sometimes would work at home, but now I'm totally working at home and having to deal with technology. It has been a huge challenge, but at the same time, it has provided new ways of doing business that I feel like that we're going to incorporate in the future for folks who, for example, who don't have physical challenges, that I can communicate like Tom and I are with you folks there, and we can share the screen and share documents. It's very helpful for those who are in remote locations or just not able to get to come to the office. So it's something that I know on our side that will be, and as far as employees and things too, to provide them with flexibility for when they do need to take leave to take care of kids and other family members, post-COVID. This is a temporary situation, but you want to maybe start rethinking and taking that time to build more efficiency into your business. And the benefits that these acts provide, you really want to think about how you can efficiently use them so that you can make it to the other side, because there will be another side. I know it's hard to believe with all the negative information out there, but it's important to keep focus and not make emotional decisions, and make decisions based on some data and how you can make it not what's happening just for today. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Anything to add, Tom?
My final comment, and unless there's some more questions, is thank you very much for joining the webinar, or whatever we're
Yes,
calling it, the Zoom meeting.
the Zoom
And,
webinar.
And you can email me, I think Alan just put up a note. You can email me at tcope@mcrazlaw.com. So Alan's got that down already. Good job, Alan.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. And go ahead and put our email in there too, mine or yours or somebody's, for our firm if there's any questions related to the slides. Tom, I want to thank you too, and thank the attendees. I really appreciate your taking the time. I know you're very busy. It's a very busy time for you. And I really appreciate your giving us some helpful advice to help folks out there.
Well, you're welcome. Thanks so much for asking me. I'm glad to do it again sometime.
Thank you, Tom. Take care. And thank you everyone for joining us. Bye.
See you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.